September the 12th, 2001. The aftermath of tragedy. While America mourned, the weather all over the country was unusually fine. "800 miles west of New York, in Madison, Wisconsin, a climate scientist called David Travis was on his way to work.
Around the 12th, later on in the day when I was driving to work, and I noticed how bright blue and clear the sky was. And at first I didn't think about it, and then I realized the sky was unusually clear.
For 15 years, Travis had been researching an apparently obscure topic: whether the vapor trails left by aircraft were having a significant effect on the climate. In the aftermath of 9/11, the entire US fleet was grounded, and Travis finally had a chance to find out.
It was certainly, one of the tiny positives that may have come out as an opportunity to do research that hopefully will never happen again.
Travis suspected that the grounding might make a small but detectable change to the climate. But what he observed was both immediate and dramatic.
We found that the change in temperature range during those 3 days was just over 1 degree C. And you have to realize that from a layman's perspective, that doesn't sound like much. But from a climate perspective, that is huge.
One degree in just 3 days. No one had ever seen such a big climatic change happen so fast. This was a new kind of climate change. Scientists call it global dimming. 2 years ago, most of them had never even heard of it. Yet now they believe it may mean all their predictions about the future of our climate could be wrong. The trail that would lead to the discovery of global dimming began 40 years ago, in Israel, with the work of a young English immigrant called Jerry Stanhill. A trained biologist, Jerry got a job helping to design irrigation schemes. His task was to measure how strongly the sun shone over Israel.
It was important for this work to measure solar radiation, because that is the factor that basically determines how much water crops require.
For a year, Jerry collected data from a network of light meters. The results were much as expected, and were used to help design the national irrigation system. But 20 years later, in the 1980s, Jerry decided to repeat his measurements to check that they were still valid. What he found stunned him.
Well, I was amazed to find that there was a very serious reduction in sunlight, the amount of sunlight in Israel. In fact, if we compare those very early measurements in the 1950s with the current measurements, there was a staggering 22% drop in the sunlight, and that really amazed me.
A 22% drop in solar energy was simply massive. If it was true, surely Israelis should be freezing. There had to be something wrong. So when Jerry published his results, they were ignored.
I must say that the publications had almost no effect whatsoever on the scientific community.
But in fact, Jerry was not the only scientist who had noticed a fall in sunlight. In Germany, a young graduate climatologist called Beate Liebert found that the same thing seemed to be happening over the Bavarian Alps too.
I was the same. I was as skeptical as any other climatologist, but then I saw the same results in Germany, so I believed him.
Germany, Israel, what about the rest of the world? Working independently of each other, Liebert and Stanhill began searching through publications, journals and meteorological records from around the world. And they both found the same extraordinary story. Between the 1950s and the early 1990s, the level of solar energy reaching the Earth's surface had dropped. 9% in Antarctica, 10% in the USA, by almost 30% in Russia, and by 16% in parts of the British Isles. This was a truly global phenomenon, and Jerry gave it a suitable name: global dimming.